You got your toothbrush?
Check.
Do you have your deodorant?
Check.
Do you have your cozy clothes?
Got that.
What?
Do they know I'm black?
Should they?
You might wanna,
Mom and Dad, my black boyfriend will be coming up this weekend. I just don't want you to be shocked that he's a black man.
I ain't never seen you like this before, bruh. Meeting families, taking road trips. Don't come back all bougie, man. Come back, get your damn pants up to your damn stomach.
This is the Next Reel's Film Board on rashpixel.fm. Each month, a gang of thugs gathers to take on a film fresh in theaters and spoil that film rotten. This month, we're tripping over ourselves to talk about the new movie from Jordan Peele called Get Out. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm running the show because JJ got scared and didn't want to see this movie. Anyway, thankfully, other thugs are up to the task and have seen this movie, and here we go, around the horn. Welcome, Tommy Hansen.
Hello, friends. Good to be here. Ooh. That was right off the bat. I'm doing good. Hello, friends.
That was
good
like
to be here.
that was good. That was at like a white people party in the suburbs. That's what that sounded like. And Andy Nelson, welcome.
Howdy, howdy.
And we welcome a new guest to the show tonight. I'm so excited, mostly because we've heard a lot about this person. Because I think he talks smack about us when he disagrees. It is Darnell Smith. Darnell, welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Great to have you here. Finally, we have heard a lot about you. And I don't know, after hanging out with Tommy, talking about, when we say things that are just egregiously wrong, I don't know why you're even here.
We end up watching just about all the movies he sees, especially superhero movies, because he's like, I don't know fake things, looking at fake things, come watch this with me. So I thought it would be good to participate. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, we are thrilled to have you, and especially on this film, because as a black guy, to join us on this show for a movie that really demands perspective that white guys yelling at the theater screen may not have. So we appreciate your insight and demand that this is not the only show that you join us on, because we need you on superhero movies too.
Right. Black Panther will be coming up soon. And,
we might go back and rewatch 42.
Right, 42. Let's do that. Who's in for a girls' trip?
You know what?
Let's do all that.
This is okay. We've got the gang all set and ready to go. Here we are. We're going to be talking about this movie. Before we do, make sure to head over to thenextreel.com. You can subscribe to the show anywhere the finer podcasts are served, and of course, follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. All right. Initial thoughts on this movie, which is clearly undersold on the poster. I think the tagline should have been a story about white people who love too much. Tommy, do you want to kick us off? You love this. You love this stuff.
I do love this stuff, and I think that Jordan Peele did an amazing job, especially as a first-timer, but there's no reason to sort of put him in that category. The script was so much smarter than I say this again sometimes, so much smarter than it needed to be. There were just layers and layers and a lot of stuff to unpack. While it wasn't terribly scary like a horror film, I would think, like I know our compatriot Steve had written in about, that it's probably a little bit more of a psychological thriller. But that being said, I had a marvelous time. I thought it was really, really fantastic.
Andy, what did you think?
I also thought it was pretty great. I had some story construction issues, but overall, I thought that I was really kind of surprised that Jordan Peele was the man behind this, because I thought for somebody who's so funny, it was kind of exciting to see him doing something that was also so thrilling and had such kind of a fun take on a kind of a smart horror movie. So I had a great time with it.
Darnell, your thoughts, sir?
I agree. I agree with you. The marketing's a little strange, because the poster and the trailer don't really, I think, really get into what a smart and great and completely on the mark thriller this is. Especially coming from the perspective of, I think this is something good Jordan Peele could do, because he has that unique perspective of being the only black guy in a room in situations. And I think this movie really took that very realistic sort of fear and paranoia that we sometimes experience and made it actually about something. And with a thriller based in reality, or based in real emotions, I should say, I think it hit all the marks. And without the social commentary, it was just a really thrilling story. It was a really thrilling film. Loved it.
I am so glad to hear that. I am not a huge fan of generally of horror movies. I'm trying so hard, and I have asked for therapy. I've asked Tommy to give me therapy. I deeply want to get better at seeing horror movies. So I was nervous going into this film because I thought it was going to be a horror movie. It was absolutely not. This is so right up my alley. I loved it. I had one little tiny problem, which was a blocking problem that we'll talk about. But generally, I found myself engaged by these characters, soup to nuts, all the way through, even the idiot brother, the idiot kung fu brother, the MMA guy. I even liked him. I liked everybody in this movie. Their performances were just fantastic. I was absolutely wrapped into the thrill of the thriller. And I got to tell you, I walked out saying, I can't wait to show more people this film. I want to see it again, like right away.
Yes, I agree. I felt like I wanted to see it, in a black theater, because I felt like this would have been a good. This is a movie, I think, for many different backgrounds. I think that there's a perspective that maybe you guys got to see, where it's like, this is what going to this sort of strange world is like through the eyes of a black person. But then for kind of black people watching it, this is the thriller we've always wanted to see. We wanted to see the brother who works for TSA come out and solve the crime, and we wanted to see our hero kind of get his comeuppance, which I'm sure we'll dive into.
That's a really funny thing that you bring up the theater experience, and we usually talk about this at the end, but I'm curious if we go around, because I sat in the theater next to, and this was, we have reserved seating at my favorite theater, right? We just all get, so I thought I'm going to get this like one seat that had open seats around it, and I sit down, and there are four guys who come in and sit next to me, and they are, I'm 6'2", right? I'm not a short man, but I'm not a giant. They are giant. They were towering over me and very large, with large beards. I mean, it was like the biggest version of Duck Dynasty you've ever seen, right? And they were just very, very, very white guys sitting next to me, and I'm already a pretty darn white guy, and they laughed like hooligans. Like, this was exactly the like, I found myself thinking, I feel like I'm in what I imagine is the stereotype of a black theater, like getting an absolute joy out of this movie. They were so engaged by this movie. The whole audience, and it was a pretty full theater this afternoon, was really attached to this story.
I think that's something to be said for smart screenwriting, right? I mean, it's a film that can play. I mean, sure, it can have that social commentary, and you can see it through those different perspectives. But at the same time, it's also a thriller, and it's a funny one at that. It's got some great comedy in it, and I think that's a sign of a good writer director who's able to kind of put that more of the social message in there, but still allow it to just be a movie that people can just go and enjoy,
to make it accessible.
Yeah, absolutely. My whole theater was very into it. I mean, everybody, white and black, everybody was very much enjoying it the whole time.
Yeah, agreed. Our theater was mostly white, kind of all ages, but everyone, I think there's something accessible about our main character, Chris, and the experience he's going through that made, these themes, universal, and made the other characters, the white characters, were ridiculous in ways that were understandable from any perspective. No one was handled in any offensive way, unintentionally offensive way. So I think I think the accessibility was a big piece of this.
They really stereotyped hypnotist therapists, though, and I found myself really frustrated by the handling of that particular trope.
I forgot to be afraid of hypnotism. That's exciting. Now I forgot. I was like, oh, that's terrifying.
Now you know. Now you know.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I liked with the film as well is some of the direction and the mood of the film is really paying tribute to horror movies of the 70s, the 60s, 70s, and Rosemary's Baby, that sort of thing. And, hypnotism, along with things that are arcane now, like Ouija boards and stuff, like hypnotism was a big thing back then, and psychology and psychiatrists were they were villains, and so I was kind of on board with that. Like, of course, there's going to be a creepy hypnotist in this film, you know.
Totally. And it just really worked. And when you look at Jordan Peele and what he said over and over, you know, that his favorite movies are like The Stepford Wives, you know, I mean, that's, that this really became that sort of psychosocial thriller that I think we haven't seen much of. Let's talk a little bit about Peele as a writer-director. As we've already said, I also did not know what to expect going into this movie because this is the Mad TV Key and Peele guy. This is the Keanu guy. This is not the horror thriller guy. How do we think he did first as a writer behind the film?
Well, I think it's very smart. I mean, we've already kind of talked about that quite a bit. I'm going to just go into a couple just story issues that I had that coming out of it, I still can't resolve in my head, and they still kind of frustrate me. The first is the fact that we start the film with this abduction of Andre as he's kind of walking down the street and everything, and it's a great scene. It's my recollection is it's all just one long shot, the whole thing kind of moving around him and everything. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed that whole abduction, and then we find out where he's been taken later in the film, which was great. But considering that the whole setup for this film is that this daughter is dating these black guys to bring them home to put them under and all this stuff and to create this stuff. The whole abduction all of a sudden just seemed just a forced open for the film, and it ended up just bothering me. I'm like, why are they now abducting this guy if they've been doing this whole thing with her taking these guys in? I really ended up not liking the opening after I kind of was thinking about that for a while.
Do we know who he was talking to?
I thought he was talking to her.
See, I was starting to think that he was talking to, I wasn't sure who he was talking to.
It wasn't her, because that would have been, because there would have been more, when they figured out who he was, they would have realized, they would have said something about that. And they said that, he was that guy who was with so-and-so. I mean, they mentioned kind of a rough thing, like they figured out who he was and everything. But then the other thing was that I was kind of frustrated that there was considering how many photos there were of her and her boyfriends that he discovers, that we only ever see 4 people that they've taken, and I was kind of like, gosh, I felt like there should have been a lot more black guys in this.
Well,
party.
and that and that 2 of them were grandma and grandpa,
right? Exactly.
Right? I mean,
right,
yeah,
right, and I guess the others were farmed out to other people.
Yes.
The other thing is the timing of that opening scene was 6 months prior to the events of the film, and they've been dating 4 or 5 months. So that's an interesting theory. Maybe he was going to see Rose, or because he was in the neighborhood for something, we just didn't know what. But I don't know if there's a connection. I'd like to see it again and see if there is a connection now that we know.
Yeah.
The other thing that they did say is that Rose's methods for corralling people are better or something than her brother's, and that her brother's methods are they made reference to that. I don't know the exact language, but they did make reference of it, which made me, it sort of connected, especially when he gets in the car at the end and sees the knight helmet, which is so great.
Yeah,
he goes around in a suit of armor helmet,
right?
In his white Porsche,
his white like 1987 Porsche, right?
924,
just awful. But anyway, that's what made me think like that. Maybe that was his method, right? It might have been just complete coincidence that he happened to be driving this neighborhood, sees a guy that fits who he's looking for, and decides I can take that guy because of my Krav Maga.
Right. He was a little more of a brute force person.
Right.
Was that guy at the beginning wearing the helmet?
Yes.
It was.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, then maybe
it was tough to see, but he was. Yeah.
I knew he was wearing a mask, but it looked more like a GIMP mask to me when I watched it. It was just so dark.
That would be a fascinating tie-in, given our Bruce Willis issues.
Right. Yes, I think Jordan Peele wrote a very tight thriller with really nice surprises, good reveals upon reveals as far as what the situation is, who's involved. then the next layer is it's not about hypnosis. It's not about just stealing black bodies. It's about brain swapping. All those different layers I thought made for a pretty good thriller. One thing that didn't add up, similar to kind of what Andy said about that opening, where it's like, that's neat, but doesn't really add up in the story, was the bizarre behavior of the party attendees. There's the shot where he goes upstairs and they suddenly stop, with their clatter. There's the silent bingo auction. That stuff was like, that's cool and creepy, but why is that happening? And so I was waiting for a reveal that they were under some sort of spell or something creepy about them, and that just never came.
That was the problem. Yeah, that it felt much more in those sequences like they were the ones hypnotized.
Right. Yeah. And it gave me a feeling of similar to it reminded me a lot of Rosemary's Baby, all the other Satanists. But it was just like, okay, no, they're just strange brain body brokers or customers or something like that.
For me, it worked okay. I was originally a little disappointed by the break of the POV, that the film is so much out of Chris's eyes, the entire movie. And then there's just the first break, I believe, is when, as Dash just mentioned, Chris goes upstairs and they all stop. It's kind of like, why are we allowed to see that? Because Chris is seeing everything else. And then later the silent auction. I understand that later it becomes sort of a necessary evil because of the amount of time that Chris spends in the sunken place, that they need to keep the story moving and show the pre-op stuff involving Stephen Root and things like that. As far as the weirdness for the white people at the party, I guess what helped me with that was the video of I'm not even going to try that word, the cocoon-ish idea.
Oh, yes.
The cocoon idea, that there is that it does seem ritualistic. It does seem like they are culty and have this other strict way of doing things. That why bingo cards and stuff, but then using them as being in as auction card stuff. It seems like maybe this is something that has been handed down for a long time.
Yeah.
Which was okay. Yeah. It's like we're not quite invited in enough to figure out all of their quirks, and that actually makes them scarier for me.
I like that idea, as well as, we're seeing this, we're experiencing this through Chris's eyes, and that seems to be a little bit of I guess kind of a metaphor of walking into, the way black people walk into sort of white rituals. And it's like, what are you guys doing? I don't understand what this is. And it's a little alien. And so I could see, I don't know if Peele's intent was to, let's make them feel a little alien so that the audience feels like this is abnormal, just Chris would. So I don't know if there's a connection, but
that makes sense.
If so, I kind of like that.
Oh, would it be? I mean, that was one of the first, if you were a black person at a white person's party suffering that kind of alienation or paranoia or something, would you, in the back of your mind, always think that when you go upstairs alone, that everyone is just waiting to see what, looking after you? Judging you or waiting to see what you're going to do or something. That's that's a personification of that kind of alienation in a thriller kind of way, which is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing else matters at this party.
Right.
Nothing else matters at all because we want to know where the black guy went.
Right.
Exactly.
So we're willing to stop talking. We're going to put our food down. We're just going to wait. It's okay. We'll wait.
Yeah.
That's what.
Right.
That is so dark.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Dark. And the lead in, like Darnell was saying about making it accessible and things, the lead in to the racism, I thought was so fascinating, of the idea of trying to ingratiate yourself by, it seemed very well-intentioned, but horribly misbegotten, of all of the my mans, of all of the, you just bring up black celebrities, black people.
Yeah.
I would have voted for Obama a third time.
That's like a line that he uses so much that his father or his daughter even says it, that this way of trying to make a connection actually is a version of racism very much on its own, because the only way that you are trying to ingratiate or connect with someone is based on skin color. And that seems like such a white foible maybe to do. Definitely something that my late grandparents would have done, honestly, of just sort of like, I mean, they would.
Well, it's overcompensating.
It's overcompensating. And then even like the next horrible step of that is they would talk about, oh, he's one of the good ones.
Right.
I'm kind of calling out my grandparents. I don't mean to put them on blast. Rest in peace. But I mean, I think that's universal of like people's grandparents generally, like one generation or two generations ago, coming from a different place a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I would even say, even currently when we deal kind of with race, we don't deal with the film kind of showed the microaggressions of, hey, I love Obama too, or my favorite golfer is Tiger Woods. But then also with Jeremy went as far as him treating Chris and talking about his body and his
genetics,
his genes and all that, the overt racism. But I really like, it's really neat that you guys picked up on the sort of microaggressions, and these are the sort of things that some Black people have to deal with, day in, day out at work, or in the case of, like my wife is white, and going to family events. Her family is incredibly nice, and I don't really have to worry about that at this point, but it is in the back of my mind of like, oh, am I going to have to talk about basketball, which I know nothing about, just because they want to connect with me, or I go to a store and
don't worry, Darnell. Now all they'll want to talk about is the movie Get Out.
Is the movie Get Out, right?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Or sometimes I'll be out at a store or something, and you'll see the guy will say, hello sir, hello ma'am, and with me it's like, hey man, and it's just like, no.
No.
So I think it was really good for the movie to really present that this is what this experience is, and how bizarreness aside, it was a little exhausting for Chris to navigate that. You really wanted him when he's like, I got to go to my room. I want to get on the phone. I want to talk to this one other Black person. I felt, and I don't know if you guys felt the same way, of like, oh, yes, take a break from all this.
I thought that was a great element of it, where it really did make me feel like, oh, this is overwhelming. I want to get out of this room too. I mean, these guys were just like horribly constricting with all of the way that they were handling everything. So I thought that Peele did a great job of that, and I thought is it Daniel Kaluuya did a great job performing that. I mean, it was really he really brought it as far as making me feel like walking in his shoes and just feeling as uncomfortable as he was feeling at this particular party and in this house.
While being very understated, like really reacting just sort of the way that you would in front of people, because you don't want to be like, I gotta get out of here. It's just sort of like politely grossed out.
And being like, absolutely, and being like, this isn't the first time that I've heard this before. This is old hat to me. And I also think Allison Williams did a great job playing off of that, of being his confidant who still can't quite understand what he's talking about. And so he had something really good to play off of with her. She wasn't naive about race issues, but maybe just didn't quite understand the nuance of the problems he dealt with at first, until, later on in the movie when we know what's going on with her.
How was her transition for everybody here? Did you guys buy into the very abrupt transition that she makes? I was torn if I was buying it or not, because it is kind of a horror trope. But at the same time, it's like there are so many times where I'm just like, she seems so authentic, and then to just have such a turn, like we never see a single little glimmer of anything, which I obviously was part of the plan, but I don't know, I was a little torn on that.
I was still playing catch up in the reveals, as Darnell, I think it was Darnell already said, of that it kept getting deeper than I thought it was. That I thought that she had been hypnotized. By her family, that she was not in on it, that was just being that she had a predilection or whatever it is, and then they kept using her like this. So it didn't bother me because I had already figured out what was going on and again was wrong.
I'm exactly with you on that, Tommy. I went through all three of those scenarios so quickly in my just sort of level of confidence play.
Yeah.
I knew that she was a part of it. I knew that she was an unwilling participant. I knew that she was still his girlfriend. I knew those things simultaneously,
Right.
and it broke my brain. Like, it was very difficult. I thought it was really well played.
Yeah, I agree. I was so invested in their relationship and the earnestness of the love they demonstrated to each other that in the back of my mind, I was like, well, if her family's crooked, she's got to be crooked too. No, put that out of your mind. That can't be.
Yeah.
And then when he finds the photos of all the other black boyfriends and the lure, she was the lure, I got that feeling from I don't know if you remember Casino Royale when Bond finds out that Vesper betrayed him. That same broken feeling of like, oh no, I was really torn over it because I was so sold on their relationship, which is a good thing the film did. I think unfortunately, I don't know if they really recovered the character of Rose as an evil person for the third act. I don't think she ever bounced back. It was her eating Fruit Loops and being weird.
Yeah, right.
That was
then
weird.
she just became maybe that's my issue is she never seemed like Rose again. She always, from that moment on, seemed like she was hypnotized. She seemed like hypnotized robot girl,
Right.
And
she's like a Terminator.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's probably what my issue is with her, is that I never see Rose again. It's just, until all the way through to the end. It's kind of the Terminator version of her.
Before we jump into first shot, last shot, I just want to get your reactions to one other very short sequence based on what we were talking about before. In terms of Jordan Peele's ability as a writer-director to give us a narrative that allows us to share in a cultural experience that is not our own, it all is wrapped up for me in the sequence when Chris is talking to Georgina, wonderfully played by Betty Gabriel, and says we just get cutting back and forth between these two very, very close-up shots right on their faces, and he says, whenever there are too many white people around, I get nervous. And then we stick on her face for a very, very long time, right? As she goes through this, we know now that, we start to see that something is in there of her origin, but she starts laughing and crying and laughing, and then she walks away very quickly. That experience of watching that sequence was probably the most powerful sequence in the film for me, because it let me, I felt exhausted. To your point about Chris, just like, oh man, I'm exhausted with him going through the experience. But it was the first time I realized that in some very small way, Jordan Peele has allowed me to peek under the hood of the kinds of things that he's experienced, or that is a part of the cultural reality, something that I don't get to see. But in this film, in the first 45 minutes, I got to share ownership of it in a way, and I just found myself walking out saying, thanks, man. That was a great experience. I don't get it, but I get it a little bit,
Yeah, no, I'm glad. It's good to hear that, because that's, people talk about, some of the reviews have talked about this is an important film, and it's sort of like, really, it's a thriller. But I think for it to generate that level, to give you that, as you said, peek under the hood of, this is something that is very real to a lot of people, maybe not the Stepford wife thriller angle, but the sort of discomfort and the paranoia that has to be pushed down when being in foreign situations like that. And so I think the movie is, its greatest success, on top of being a really strong thriller, is really creating a sense of racial empathy that very few films could pull off.
Along that same kind of line, I hope this is still along enough of that same kind of line, is my favorite idea or sequence in the movie was towards the very end, or at the very end, I guess, when it was the first time in a horror movie that I can remember where a police car with its lights going showed up just in time to save the day, and I felt nothing but dread.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
How smart is that? That's so smart. Because, the police are like, there's such a vision of hope in horror films of like, oh, we can, usually they're like, hey, get out of there. And then they end up dying, but still they're a chance. And it was like, oh, after all of this to be taken down by the police. And then it's the TSA reveal. I mean, to have a police car be such a foreboding thing was just, I thought it was so fantastic.
Well, and then it's a punchline to a joke that we, I don't mean it in the funny kind of joke, but it's the punchline that we get to see that ends the joke that starts when they got pulled over, when the cop showed up, when they hit the deer in the beginning, right? Which was, that set us up for that foreboding experience. This is something she's not going to understand, but she's going to come to his defense, and that's going to be a thing that's between them. And the next time we see a cop in this area, we expect it to be a horrible experience, and it was a savior. That was beautiful.
Well, and it's a great play off of horror tropes. Going back to like even Night of the Living Dead, how the way that film ended, and just the modern society and everything. It was a great way to play off of all of that. And I mean, I totally was also right there with you, Tommy. Totally full of dread, going, oh, here it is. This is going to be that dark ending again. And they twisted it, which I thought was a great way to play with that.
When was the last time you saw a door open and said TSA and you cheered?
Yeah.
That's also kind of cool because people hate the TSA wrongly,
right?
But
exactly
the TSA, and so to make that kind of, and our theater did cheer, like it broke out into applause.
Yes, and our theater, I kind of audibly gasped in dread and thought like, oh, this has gotten even worse. And then Rose starts to play the victim, and I mean, it did look like Andy said, it looked like this was going to end like Night of the Living Dead. And yes, that was just a great laugh moment. It was a great way to let all the air out of the dread. I mean, to end this type of movie with that kind of comedy was just brilliant.
Let's talk about First Shot, Last Shot, see if we have any connections there. Andy, you want to do First Shot for us?
Yeah, we already kind of talked about it. It starts on a night suburban street, empty except for a man walking and talking on his cell phone. It's a single shot as he is walking, trying to figure out where he is, lost in the suburbs. And then we see a vehicle pull up and kind of, turn back to pursue him, and he changes directions. And then it goes all the way through this man getting abducted, thrown into the trunk as the vehicle drives away.
Last Shot was them leaving with bodies laying in the street in the foreground, kind of the opposite of entering the suburbs. It's finally our hero and his savior leaving the suburbs in a car, while some of the remainders of the carnage that had gone on are laying in his wake.
What do we think? Is that a satisfying parallel for you?
Well, it certainly fits the genre, right? I mean, it starts with the thrill and it ends in kind of the resolution of that story. So to that end, I think it works. And it sets it up as far as, what this story is all about, right? These abductions and their purpose and everything, is you have, Rose and Grandpa lying in the road. So to that end, I think it works.
And, the First Shot also had our guy, I can't remember his name, but he's played by Lakeith Stanfield. As he's going in the neighborhood, Andre. Yeah. As he's going into the neighborhood, he's talking on the phone about, oh, damn it, I'm in the wrong neighborhood. This can't go well. And then the last shot right before they drive away is Rod telling him, I told you not to go see her parents. So it's this sort of, black cautionary tale on both ends of like, hey, don't mess around with white people, So there was that little parallel.
The song at the beginning was I don't know, I found myself humming that horrible song Run Rabbit Run afterwards. And I knew I'd heard it somewhere. This is a song as the volume goes up as the Porsche drives away. Abduction completed. The song was written for Noel Gay's show The Little Dog Laughed, opening in October 11th, 1939. Very popular during World War II, especially after Flanagan and Allen changed the lyrics to poke fun at the Germans. Run, Adolf, run, Adolf, run, run, run.
It's funny.
I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but I thought that was an interesting one.
I was assuming the song was some unfortunately racist song. like back in the day of like just sort of, not that I got that from the lyrics, but I was just sort of assuming that of like, what's the rabbit in that situation, something like that. But I guess it's not. So, hooray, white people.
Go.
We nailed it.
Okay.
Screw you, Hitler.
The cast, we've already mentioned Daniel Kaluuya.
Yeah.
He plays Chris. First of all, man, his accent is awesome. That guy is a right Brit, but I didn't question that at all.
Never.
Yeah. I absolutely. I didn't think I'd seen him before, but I saw him, he was in Sicario. He was on the UK show Skins, which I watched obsessively. And I was like, oh, it's that guy. He is fantastic. So I hope we see him in more stuff.
Well, and our very favorite Black Mirror.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. 15 million merits.
Yeah, 15 million merits. It was just wonderful. And I walked out of that saying, it's one of those guys that you just say, that guy has a charisma that I now would like to see him in every movie that I see. Like,
Absolutely.
I just want to see him in every movie. He was fantastic.
And so subtle.
Does that make you want to run out and watch Johnny English Reborn?
Except for that one. No, I don't. I'm not as into that one. So, but I would see Kick-Ass 2 again. Yeah, I saw it the first time. Shut up. Allison Williams is Rose. We know her from Girls. We also know her as Peter Pan.
All right.
Did you catch that? She was on the live NBC performance. She played Peter Pan.
Yeah.
Opposite Walken.
And that's such an important character to get right. And she did, and the writing did, because it kind of is. I don't think anyone said this yet, probably. But it's she's, in a way, the audience surrogate for liberal white people who go in to watch this movie of like, well, I'm not them, and ha ha ha, Bradley Whitford and stuff like that. But then the subtleties of her failings to be able to really acknowledge it, or really be able to understand, like Darnell said, the subtleties of some of the racism, some of the alienation. She did a great job. I think that's one of those hardest things for me, is when she turned out to be a baddie at the end. It was like, that was supposed to be me. That's all we had.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I agree. I thought she was a very important. You have to get that character right, because if she's too clueless or a little too nebulous, then none of it works. And she was so sweet and endearing, and even though she couldn't quite empathize, she seemed to like Chris and love Chris enough to be on his side. So when he would confide in her, you're like, yes, go talk to Rose. It'll be okay. And then when it wasn't, I think that was great. And she really did a good job.
Lakeith Stanfield plays Dre. And, I sort of bring up Lakeith Stanfield and again with Betty Gabriel. They did a fantastic job playing weird white people.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
And
not in a
Marcus
way of
Henderson,
like
too.
being a
Marcus Henderson too.
like an Eddie Murphy routine.
Yeah, right.
Like traditionally black people talk, when they talk like white people, they're like burr, 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 and stuff. But it was very finely tuned with the writing. I think really helped a lot by, for instance, Church not understanding what snitch was, but a tattletale. Like it's almost like some of the writing.
That's exactly
it's like,
yeah.
It forces a way of talking.
Yeah.
Which is really cool and probably helpful for the actors, I would think.
Well, and Lakeith Andres, or not Dre, but when he was coming out of his therapy session with Catherine Keener, and his apology to the group was really accentuated that point for me, right? I mean, I feel like I owe you an apology. It was the sort of strident, like, oh, I can't even listen to this.
Right.
It's so right on.
I have to rob you of my wit. Like,
yes.
It's weird
daggers.
Yacht party humor.
Yes.
Right.
Ahoy, Polloy.
Right.
Yeah. It's almost like they played it, not like as you said, play it like an Eddie Murphy spoof, but play it. Chris says a great line to Rod when he's talking to Rod. It's as if they missed the movement, And they kind of played these characters. Pretend like you were never, ever black. What would that be like? And you never had the black experience. And how would you talk and how would you react? And that there was a level of that mixed with, again, the script just put them in very off-putting situations. And I thought they all played it well. Lakeith Stanfield he's fantastic on Atlanta. He's one of the main characters on Atlanta, and completely different in that role. So it was neat seeing him play a little bit different than what we've seen him before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we didn't even mention Straight Outta Compton either, which is
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Marcus Henderson's conversation as Walter that he has with Chris about Rose, I thought that was also just a really off-putting conversation about
was
how
that Grandpa.
That's Grandpa.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
I still don't understand his exercise routine in the middle of the night. But that being aside, his conversation that he has with Chris is really off-putting, and it's really interesting and frightening. Once like in retrospect, knowing that that's Grandpa talking to him, because all those signs that Chris has when he's talking to Walter about, he was very kind of aggressive. Like, there's this aggressive energy that he had, like he liked you. There was some energy there I didn't get. I thought that was a really interesting conversation that also said a lot just about just kind of that it came off seeming so strange to hear coming out of that character's mouth.
She's the top of the heap. What a
Right.
great,
Yeah.
what a great turn of phrase.
What a great old man. Right.
Well, wait, you just questioned the exercise routine. I get that. Also, it never really occurred to me until now. Are they in charge of gardening and keeping the house up?
No, and that was something else that I was.
Why would they want to do that?
Right.
If
Why
the
would
point-
they?
Well, I have a theory about the exercise routine.
Okay, but did you have a theory about why are you in charge of replacing drinks and like cleaning and stuff?
Right.
I have a theory about that too. Would you like to hear it?
Love
Yeah.
it.
What's your theory on that?
All right. So my theory about that stuff is all in Stephen Root's conversation, right? When he unveils what their whole underlying purpose is, and why they do the brain switching thing
On the TV?
is because on the TV because some of them they want to be more fit. They want to do. I really believed that Grandpa was taking the body out for a run that night.
No,
right?
I agree with
really
that. Yes.
Yeah. Like and so that didn't strike me. It strike me as odd at all. And the cleaning and gardening thing felt very much like, okay, we've got an outsider here, and this is where we need to go into Disney mode, right? We need to.
okay.
This is where the animatronics get turned on because we have a mission.
We don't actually see
we
them
need
doing
to do our part.
that much stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of the times,
Right.
The church is just trying to cover up the scar on her head.
Yes, right, exactly.
With incessantly moving her hair and stuff. Good point. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That plays.
Well, I don't know if it makes sense. It only makes sense to the degree that you buy it.
Sure. But no, I liked how the hair thing turned out because that lesser movies would have just had someone looking at themselves in a mirror and doing weird things and not have it be a part of the mythology. But later when you see them all, when he doesn't have a hat for the first time and when she doesn't have her hair done the same kind of way, that you can see that they have weird heads.
Yeah. You ruined my house. That was a great reveal.
Right,
I
great.
did not see that coming.
Yeah, I wondered if that was the case, and then that kind of confirmed it. It was like, oh, if these must be the dead grandparents, and then the "You Ruined My House" is like, oh wow, okay, because I was kind of rooting for him to save Georgina, like, oh, save all the black people on the way out, and it was like, oh wait, no,
they're not anymore.
They're right, they're brain switched. It's they.
Oh, the important thing is though that Grandpa did. I'm sorry, not Grandpa. The guy that Grandpa's took his body. What? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Did commit suicide at the end. That let all of that go because the most horrifying thing. It doesn't make sense to me science-wise, but the most horrifying thing, not terrifying, but horrifying thing in the movie is the fact that for whatever reason, they're still there in the sunken place watching.
Yeah.
You do all this stuff. That's bad news. Like that's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night. So I like the idea. I think that he just wanted release at that point was an important thing. Otherwise, wouldn't we want to go around and try to save everybody?
Yeah, that flash finally, that's the tool that allows them that one little moment to get out.
Right.
It's like the name in Split.
Right. That is a little bit like water in Signs of like there's just no flash photography in this town.
You're right.
I guess.
Right.
But fair enough. I'll take it.
That's the one thing. Yeah. But I agree with it. It did make a lot of sense of, okay, if they're swapping out brains, how does the original person's conscience stay with the body? Again, it's one of those things. This movie's filled with a lot of neat things that maybe aren't served well by the story or don't serve the story well.
Yeah, they tried to sort of give us something to attach to that particular point that Stephen Root tossed it off, right? He totally hung a lantern on it,
I was
right?
fine with it.
Right.
Yeah, just sort of like, it's science stuff. Goodbye. Yeah, I was fine with that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you just got to have to like, yeah, okay, whatever.
If that's what
In
he
context
needs,
of this world.
yeah, if that's what he needs to make A, that horror thing work, and B, to make all of these kind of comments, I'm down with it. I mean, I'm fine with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that the case in any horror movie? There's always going to be some, science oddity or
The car never
whatever.
starts, like all that stuff. We just have to be okay with things, unless we want, unless we're Scream.
Let's before we go too much further, let's talk briefly about Bradley Whitford and Catherine Keener as the maniacal family heads.
So perfect. Oh.
I just kept
How long
laughing.
has this been a thing?
Yeah, oh God.
So awkward.
I kept laughing that Catherine Keener was in this, and it was like this, and then tied to being John Malkovich is all I could think of. Is that in both cases, it's people trying to get into other people's heads. It just made me laugh
really
that she
good
had
point.
with this one.
I thought she was really good. The hypnosis effect with the teacup, I thought was really brilliant, and I mean, it made teacups scary. And she was very good. She played it where Bradley Whitford, he was sort of just kind of goofy nerd dad for a big chunk of the film, but she always had this undercurrent of dread that I thought worked. She was always staring at him or glancing at someone else in a way where it was like, ooh, something seems off with her. And so when she first sent him down into the what's it called?
Sunken place.
Sunken place. It's like, oh, she's the villain. Okay, this is what's going on.
In particular, the way they shot the reverse angle on the sunken place with him looking at her outside, she got way too comfortable that first time around, when he first is falling into the sunken place, as she kind of leans up to him and leads up to that little window that was such a nice touch that, I mean, something's wrong with her in the first place, but that was a really nice visual effect that added to the narrative in a strong way for me.
Absolutely.
Anybody else in the cast that you feel like we need to call attention to in particular?
Jeremy was so weird.
Who was?
He was a little too weird. The son.
The brother.
Rose's brother. I'm sorry. Yeah. But I guess maybe, I don't know. Like, he's at risk of blowing the whole thing all the time. Like, he was just so crazy, but maybe
Sitting on the porch playing the ukulele. I was just waiting for
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
God,
Right.
Deliverance,
Oh my God.
too much.
he was just a leave thing force right away. And then they talk about him, following in his old man's footsteps and stuff. I guess maybe he could represent just sort of the less varnished, the more just outwardly hateful towards them, which I guess can work. But it did seem a little off-putting. Well, of course, off-putting. It's supposed to be off-putting, but a little bit like, he's bad at this. Like this weird heist. Like, why is he such a creep all the time?
The dinner was just too much. You into MMA? Like, come on. It's so weird.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that was Caleb Landry Jones's acting or how much was it the Jeremy character, but yeah, it was very, I think, off-putting, but sometimes not in the way it was supposed to be. It was just like
It felt like a different
film.
film. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
Jinx.
Yeah, is he? I'll get you your Coke tomorrow.
Thank you.
But I like the concept of, like, here's everyone pretending, and here's someone who's bad at it and kind of doesn't want to. He just wants to be a little bit more. He snatches them up off the street. He doesn't like luring them in a trap. So I like the idea of the character. I'm not sure if Caleb Jones played it with the nuance that it needed.
That's an interesting thing to think about, because that's that one part, as we talk about it, that's the one element of the film that feels like, okay, we're just going to be grabbing some stereotypes from crazy white people family films,
Right.
and this is going to be that one. It's going to be the front porch banjo guy, and it's just going to be weird. Everybody move on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought, Rod, as his best friend, TSA agent, the actor was funny. I thought it was great, but that as a character was I think worth mentioning, because I felt like that's the character who he is black people talking at the theater personified. It's like, oh, put me in this movie and see how I'll do. And it's sort of like Jordan Peele said, okay, well, let's put this type of person in the movie. And he's figuring everything out with his conspiracy theories, and he's putting two together. And, he's yelling at the screen for us by yelling at Chris every chance he can get. I thought he was a really great character, and really, really good that the movie, after a while, was like, let's cut to him and see him figure all this out and get nowhere with the police. And, I really liked that aspect of it, and him showing up to save the day.
That makes sense.
All while being funny.
I was actually relieved that they did that. I mean, that they gave that character, and the actor Lil Rel Howery was very, very funny, but they gave him much more weight, sort of orbit in the last, the bottom
Instead
half
of
the film.
just being the funny or sassy black friend.
Yeah, they did not play him as a stereotype, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
His arc, like, he had such a great arc, going from just the guy who's like, just his buddy house sitting, to now he's digging in, and he's trying to convince. One of my favorite scenes was when he's trying to convince the detectives of his crazy story, and she brings in all the friends to hear it. That was just fantastic. And then saving the day. I loved his moment when he's just sitting there and he's just like, I told you so.
I told you so. Yeah.
I told you.
That was another kind of satisfying thing. There were a number of "I told you so" moments, which I thought were really gratifying. He says it or Chris says it to Rose too. I told you. I told you. Now we know, of course, that it was all an act, but at the time, the first time you see it, you're thinking, "Oh, wow, that's really great. He was totally right." And I feel resolved that he called her out on it, on her naivete. The other thing about that the police sequence that I thought was funny is that all the detectives that she brings in, they're all black, right?
Yeah.
And so now we have all three of the black detectives laughing at the black TSA agent, which I thought was really funny, and like it shows kind of a nuanced complexity that, like I don't know, I don't know. It just felt like they could have brought in the surly kind of Brooklyn Nine-Nine
Right.
old white detectives, and for some reason, I found it funnier that this guy can't even get support from his own people.
Right. It was too outlandish for even his own people.
Yeah.
But even at one point when she called in the buddies, I was like, oh, is this a serious thing? Are we going to have black cops running to save the day? So I liked that I didn't know where it was going, and for it to turn out to be, oh, it's going nowhere because we think he's crazy. I thought that was really funny as well.
Yep.
He was trying everything with the level of cleverness that he has mixed with the common sense. He was trying everything he could to save his friend, trying to record Rose and on the call, and that didn't work. And, I really liked his little arc and how it ended up working and saving the day.
Yeah, it was great.
Cinematography by Tony Oliver. I want to mention cinematography and editing for this film. First, Toby Oliver, what do we think of how this thing was lensed?
I thought it was a lot better. Again, as I said at the top of the show, I had some worries watching the trailer. The trailer was poorly cut and it looked a little flat, but I think the film itself, it was serviceable. It was pretty good. I thought it had a good nod to horror cinema of the 70s with some of the warm lighting and some of the very slow and still shots. I liked it.
Yeah, there were some nice shots. The one that for some reason that stuck with me is the one when Chris is strapped into the chair in the basement and the camera kind of lingers on the deer. It's almost like a very Kubrickian sort of shot right behind him, looking up at the deer, and then just kind of a very slow tilt down. as we kind of see him in the TV, but it's just done so slowly that I don't know, just the way that the camera moved in that particular space, I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, and I thought it was smart that it was pretty unfussy until the reality started to drop away. Not the reality, meaning when it being like, oh, this is a thriller, these people are crazy, there's a cult, that kind of stuff. That a lot of it wasn't filmed in too much quote unquote horror movie kind of angles. They didn't cut the frame a lot. Like there was, everything was pretty easily seen. Everything was pretty much in MCUs or CUs and stuff. That helped for me with the idea of, is he being paranoid? Is it, that weird? Because if everything was cynical, not cynical, but sinister from the beginning, then it would just sort of be so much more one-sided.
Although they do have a couple of really, the choices of jump cuts were very strange. There are only a couple of them. And the first one is like grandma walks behind the scene, right? Behind him down the hall, which is totally not a jump cut worthy thing.
What are you saying, jump cut or jump scare?
Slam
Are you saying jump scare?
Or jump scare, not a jump. I'm sorry, jump scare. It was totally not jump scare worthy thing, right? It was just one of those kind of, grandma's also in the house. So I don't know. I was unmoved by some of the efforts for the jump scares.
Yeah.
The editing to the point in the room, in the locked room, that's my only challenge. And I'm not sure if it's I said it was a blocking challenge. I'm not sure if it's a blocking or a cutting. Maybe they just didn't have the right film. But it's when Chris has the stuff in his ears, so he doesn't hear the teacup. He's pretending to be out, and the brother comes in to get him and unbuckles him. The brother is standing like less than a foot from the chair, and somehow Chris is able to stand up and go get a bocce ball and sneak up behind him and beat him in the head. Like he's not even out of the field of vision based on where he's standing in relationship to the wheelchair. And that bugged me so much because this film isn't generally full of stuff that I caught that took me out of it, and this one sure did.
Well, that's a moment that I think that Peele used a couple times, because I also noticed the exact same technique used at the very beginning when Andre is captured, because and I guess he just plays it in a way where if it's not in frame, the character that we're looking at doesn't hear it and doesn't see it. Because the exact same thing, he would hear that car go into park. He would hear the door open, all of that sort of stuff. But, right, all of that stuff. He hears none of it and doesn't see any of it. And then we spin around and we see, the door's open, and then all of a sudden the guy comes up behind him. I mean, so it's just a technique I think Peele was using. That was an effect that I also was a little not quite so sure of, but in context, I guess I'll give it to him.
Well, yeah, because otherwise the film is super smart. And Andy, I actually blame you for why I respond this way to this stuff, because we talked about it explicitly in the Indiana Jones, when we started talking about Indiana Jones many years ago now, because Spielberg does this all the time.
Yeah.
And it drives me batty.
Right, where if it's not, if the character on screen doesn't see it because it's outside of the scope of the frame, then it doesn't exist. And it's one of those weird film techniques that a lot of films, especially horror, end up using quite a bit.
And that's, I guess, my point. I don't feel like this film needed it.
It was smarter than that. Yeah. I think another way it did it maybe a little more smart was when Dean, Bradley Whitford, was standing there and he turns, and then all of a sudden Chris sneaks up on him with the deer antlers. That was a little like, that's a little long of a hallway to sneak up on him, but it was a good thrill. It was the audience's like, okay, we're fighting to the death here. I did like that, but there is a lot of that. It's a horror trope. Yeah, that this movie didn't need to do.
See, that's why I need to watch more horror movies so that I can have that same experience as you guys and be okay with it. Right now, it just bugs me. The effects, I think, who was it? Tommy? Who made the point about the effects?
I made one point, which was just that the biggest CGI, I guess you would call it CGI, is involved in the sunken place. And I like that they didn't try to do too much, that it was really just sort of an underwater effect without being underwater, and mostly blackness, looking up at kind of a TV screen. The TV screen thing didn't thrill me at first, but then when I understood what was going on, I liked it better. Most importantly, especially for a Blumhouse thing, you do not have money for crazy CGI. So if you're going to, that's what makes Blumhouse such a brilliant production company. So it seemed like the most practical of CGI effects. And I liked it. Mm-hmm. I liked it because it didn't bring me out of it. It made me sort of understand just as much as I needed to of what that feeling would be like, of being able to sort of see what's happening, not being in control, and drowning in your own body.
Well, that reminds me of the feeling of being anesthetized, right? Of kind of losing consciousness.
Yeah.
I really felt like that. Like I was, this is maybe as close as I've ever felt to an on-screen representation of what it feels like to have tunnel vision.
Yeah, I think that it was a great way to show, it was almost him at the bottom of this pool. And I think the helplessness was really well captured in that. And to Tom's point, the way it was done in this very simple way, and there wasn't a lot of effects or music or any cheats put onto it. I think really helped. So every time he went there was a sense of dread. It was like the sunken place felt like a real place of fear, which is what I really enjoyed with it.
Being able to so physically fight against what's happening, but as if you're underwater. That's nightmare situation of like
absolutely
that running down a hallway, but your feet get stuck in the floor kind of a thing.
When they knocked him out and they were at the end, and the three of their faces were over him.
Mm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And she like leaned in and said, "You were one of my favorites." And like kissed him on the screen. That was that feeling of helplessness was just palpable.
Yeah.
It was really terrifying.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Last point is that I have was on music as we get toward wrapping up here, and that's Michael Abels. Has he done anything else?
This was his first film score. He's an African American composer who's done just a lot of stuff. Actually, a lot of different varieties of music. It looks like, but. I found a quote of Peele saying, "I wanted Michael Abels, who did the score, to create something that felt like it lived in this absence of hope, but still had black roots." I thought the score right out of the gate had a really creepy kind of tone to it, like with some of the chanting and the stuff that was going on.
Was that fake language? Like in
I couldn't tell. I could never
Adiamos,
hear it well
like
enough.
It seemed like one of those that was maybe like using a sound. Adiamos, that's the one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was like using the feeling of language, but not actually making real music. I was wondering if it was some of that. I loved that song. And stuff, that part of the score.
It reminded me, it was like mixing if we're talking about the song over the opening credits at the beginning.
Yeah, opening and closing.
Yeah, that felt a little like something from The Omen with the Gregorian chants mixed with giving it
a spiritual.
A gospel.
Yeah, with a spiritual. Exactly.
There was a little bit of gospel to it, which was just like, okay, this is very fitting. It's interesting you say that, Andy, because I'm like, this is like the black version of a song from The Omen or one of those classic horror films. I loved it.
Yeah.
That song is titled Sikiliza Kwa Wahenga.
It's
that sounds available on the soundtrack, which is you can find now
That's
on
interesting.
Apple Music.
Those
and
words
Spotify.
sound African, honestly, to me, but I wonder if it's fake African or real African.
Ooh. Or real.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll never know.
You can also get the hit song Ukulele Walk, which I know you're going to want to do that one.
Wikipedia.
I've already Spotify'd that one.
Wikipedia does say, because everything they say is accurate, but it does say the final score features Swahili voices as well as blues influence. So
okay.
There you go.
Well, it was great. You go, Michael Abels. Nice score.
Great work, except for that horrible sting on that jump scare.
The jump scare
with the granny walking by.
Not necessary.
I jumped.
Tom audibly gasped. Like,
and then immediately, do you remember? I immediately felt bad about it. I was like, "Ging!" It was like someone threw a cat on a piano, and I was like, "Oh, come on!"
Completely,
Yeah. I totally did.
totally unnecessary.
How it only just opened as we're talking about this. Do we have any first day numbers? Andy, have you checked?
I have a feeling this movie is going to be good, and then it's going to have legs.
I think it will have legs.
I've gotten two texts from two different friends saying, "Hey, all I read about is that Get Out is supposed to be good. Will you see it with me?" Of like ones that don't usually see horror movies, but would want a horror friend like me.
My wife doesn't see movies at all with me. Like, I think I've seen 5 movies in the theater in 18 years of marriage. Like, she just is not into movies.
Weird.
And she right. And she tells me yesterday on her birthday that that's a thing she might want to do, is go see this movie because she heard about it on NPR. So, well, it's funny. If that's not a white lady thing to say, I don't know what
this
is.
movie is coming. Yeah. Fresh Air said that this movie is coming out. The timing of this movie is perfect. Is so relevant and so weirdly exactly some of the anxiety of our times without rubbing noses in things. Like, it's just very, very, this could really take off.
Yeah. And I hope that people do reach out and see it, because I feel like it's a movie that if you don't know, hey, Get Out, what's that about? Oh, a black guy goes with his to visit his white girlfriend's family, and it turns out that they're all killers or whatever. That will immediately could turn off a lot of people, especially a lot of white people that could go, oh, that's another white guilt movie. And I hope that people maybe push past that and go see it, because I think there's something real neat there for everyone.
Yeah.
So that's a worry I do have, is that sometimes, black movie, I'm not into it. It's like,
well, that's what's so crazy. What's so crazy about this movie is that you're right, that the way you kind of it'd be so easy to toss off what this film is about, but what you don't get is that weird undercurrent of black fetishism that this film capitalizes on in a way that makes you look at the race issue in a different way, and that I've never seen a movie like this or take on this issue in this way, and it's really fascinating.
Well, but that's something I think that a lot of great horror movies do. It's a great genre for that, and not a lot of directors do it, but I think that you can find a lot of really interesting things said in horror movies. So it's a great story to tell here, and I think that he does a great job. It still is getting after 134 critic reviews, it still has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a pretty rare thing. Unless it's a film that only has like 2 or 3 reviews and they're all really good. But I mean, this is still sitting at 100%. From what I'm seeing, that this movie is projected to make $28.8 million this weekend.
For a Blumhouse movie, that's huge.
Great. It looked like it earned first place in the Friday box office chart with $10.8 million, a little higher than they predicted, but not quite up to the heights that seemed possible, apparently after Thursday's $1.8 million preview opening. But still, it looks like it's a great spot for it, and it looks like if it can keep it up, that it's going to end up owning the weekend. So
that's great. That's great. And I'm sure has a very low production budget. It doesn't seem like it had much of a budget.
And again, that's the Blumhouse shingle. I mean, that's the idea. Yeah, they keep all that stuff so little.
Production budget was $5 million. Production budget.
Wow.
Yep. So that's 2 Blumhouses in a row for film Board.
Yeah, Split also on a $5 million budget.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's great, because the one thing that I hope we get out of this is Jordan Peele as a hit Hollywood director. I think he's fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. This
is a great first effort.
Let's. I think it's probably time for us to rank it.
I've done a couple of raps in the past, and this time I thought I would do a rap that would be written by one of the horrible white people in this film. So here's how it goes. My name is Tommy Handsome, and I'm here to say that I like to rap in a flick chart way. I really like the movie, and that's no jive. Hey, Harriet Tubman, wish she was alive, 'cause she was great, and Denzel is too. If I could give out Oscars, I'd give him 2. But it's time to rank Get Out, so let's do it, my bro, and we can have some tea at the end of the show. Word to your moms, flick chart. Was
Brilliant.
that a mistake?
So great.
Time will tell.
Fair enough.
Time will tell. Head over to flickchart.com/TNR Film Board if you want to check out the list of films we have talked about on this very show, or you can just swipe over to the show notes on your podcast app of choice, and you can tap on it. Just tap on the little Flickchart link. It'll take you right over to Get Out and Flickchart. You can add it to your library, and let's see how it ranks. Andy?
First up, we have Get Out or The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey.
Oh, this is going to be tough. I'll go last.
Oh, I will say Get Out.
I will say Get Out.
Get Out.
Get Out.
All right, next we have Get Out or Prisoners. Oh, jumping right to a difficult one.
Oh, wow. Get Out.
I would say Get Out first. Yeah.
I'll have to abstain. I've not seen Prisoners, and I have to fix that.
Yeah,
You do have to fix
should,
that.
yeah.
It's a really great film. It's a really hard film to watch a second time. So
Yeah.
I probably would pick Prisoners just because I think that what Villeneuve does with that film is great. But Get Out's going to be the one that takes it for me because it's going to be so much easier to watch again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get Out or The Martian. Definitely Get Out for me.
Get Out.
Get Out.
I'm going to say it just for the record, Get Out, which kind of surprises me because I was big on The Martian,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
yeah.
Get Out or Kingsman, The Secret Service.
Kingsman.
Yeah,
Ooh.
I'm going to say Kingsman.
I'm going to say Get Out.
Oh my gosh, Rochambeau, Pete, do your job.
No, I'm pretty hardcore Kingsman on this one. I mean, I took my underage daughter to see that movie. That was a grand parenting
Wow,
mistake.
that's a bad
Yeah.
call.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bad
that was a
call.
horrible thing.
The things that she's learned now. Oh, dear.
Oh boy.
All right, Get Out or Split. Oh, last month's movie.
Oh,
I have to abstain.
Oh,
I
you
have to
still
abstain as
haven't
well.
seen Split?
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
Tommy, it's you and me.
I really liked both, but pound for pound, Get Out is smarter.
I feel like if I'm saying Split, it's mainly because of the ending.
Right.
Which, I mean, it's great, but at the same time, I think that, and I do really enjoy Split. I probably would watch Split again first, but I think Get Out's the smarter film.
Get Out just has so much more to unpack in a good way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, believe it or not, that puts it at number 5 on our chart. 5 out of 55. So great job, Jordan Peele.
Nice.
Such a great film. What does that do for your Letterboxd ranking over at letterboxd.com/thenextreel?
I am at 4 stars on this one. I had some story issues, like I said, but otherwise I thought it was a pretty fantastic film.
Yep, I'll go for it.
I would also do 4.
I was going back and
I
forth
think
between
after
3.5 and 4. What are you, Darnell?
Yeah, I'm between 4 and 4.5, and I think if I see it a few more times, I think this film is going to be one that I'll be watching and we'll be talking about for years to come. But right now, having seen it just one time, it would be 4 stars.
It is a 4-star film for me as well. And I did not expect to be saying that. I was really apprehensive going into this movie, but I enjoyed this film.
That's so
a
great.
lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good pick, Film
Yeah.
Board.
Really good pick.
Screw
Film
you,
Board.
Child 44. We're back.
So where do we go from here? Anybody happen to know?
Well, believe it or not, we have our next film board is next week because we went from the end of February to the beginning of March, and we're going to be talking about Logan, our next big Marvel movie.
Woo!
Oh, man.
Outstanding.
Oh, yeah. Can't wait for that. This has been a wonderful conversation, gents. I am so glad we talked about this movie. Thank you all for your participation. Tommy, as always, my friend.
Always a pleasure. This is wonderful.
Always a pleasure. Andy, so great to talk to you again.
Absolutely, and we'll be chatting again soon.
Darnell, welcome. How do you feel?
This was great. Thank you so much for having me. And what a great film to unpack and talk about. I'm glad we didn't do something, like Child 44.
Yeah, did you dodge a bullet or a train?
But no, this is a great discussion, and I'm really thanks. I really love this podcast.
Hey, we'll bring it back for Child 45.
Oh, great.
Thank you so much, everybody. On behalf of Darnell and Tommy and Andy, I'm Pete Wright. Make sure to head over to iTunes if you like the show. Drop us a review. We sure would appreciate it. Other than that, we'll catch you next week as we unpack Logan. Thanks, everybody.